Hi, this is Vashti Braha. I'm going to demonstrate how to crochet what I call the Rosepuff stitch pattern. I've used it for two designs so far. You can see one of them here. This one is a completed Rosepuff shawlette, also in a full shawl size. This is the start of another Rosepuff shawlette. This here is the gauge swatch, and I'm going to show you how to crochet this. Here is my foundation chain of 19 chains. The first step is a rose puff in the 5th chain from your hook. So you skip the first 4 foundation chains. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to crochet into the top 2 loops. So first I yarn over, insert my hook in the 5th chain, and pull up a loop to the height of a double crochet. Then I repeat that 2 more times in the same stitch, that same chain. Yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop to the same height. Once more. I have 7 loops on my hook. I yarn over and pull through all 7 loops. This is a standard puff stitch, a 3 half double puff stitch. Then I chain 4, and I like to chain 4 tightly. The rose puff has 2 more puff stitches in it, so the second puff stitch is going to go into the 4th chain from your hook. And I like to insert my hook under the top loop that is closest to me and under the bump loop or the back loop of the chain. So another puff stitch, yarn over, insert your hook in the 4th chain from your hook, pull up a loop to the height of a double crochet, and no taller, in my opinion. It makes the rose puffs look kind of stringy. One more. Okay, 7 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through all 7. And for the last puff, I chain 1. And the 3rd puff is going to be worked into the same stitch as the first puff. Yarn over, insert your hook into the same stitch that the first puff is in, pull it up to the height of a double crochet, repeat that twice more. Yarn over, pull through all 7, and we have our first rose puff. Something to notice about this first rose puff is it has 4 chains at the top. The next row we'll crochet into this chain 4 space. Okay, the next step is to chain 3. Skip the next 3 foundation chains and double crochet into the next chain. Chain 3, skip the next 3 chains and rose puff in the next chain. So that means I'm going to do a yarn over so that I can do a 3 half double puff stitch in that foundation chain. Chain 4 rather tightly, and a puff in that 4th chain from my hook under that front top loop and its back loop. The reason for that is I like the way that second puff settles in the final rose puff. Yarn over, pull through all 7 loops, and then chain 1 to begin the last puff of this group. Okay, puff number 3 goes into the same foundation chain as the first puff. Chain 3, skip the next 3 chains, double crochet in the next chain, and at the end of the row 2 chains remain. So you chain 1 and then double crochet in the last chain. Chain 4, turn. Okay, for row 2, we skip the first double crochet, skip the first chain, and do a rose puff in the next double crochet. Something that I like to do is I crochet into not just the top 2 loops of the double crochet, but also there's a 3rd loop just under those top 2 loops, and sometimes it's called the top 3 loops. This is something some people like to do for filet crochet. That's where I first saw directions for it, but I prefer it also when I do lacy stitch patterns with tall stitches. They look less stringy and loopy. You don't have to if you don't want to. First puff is completed, chain 4. Second puff into the 4th chain from the hook. Chain 1, and the 3rd puff down there in the same place as the first puff. Chain 3, skip these 3 chains and double crochet into that chain 4 space at the top of the puff. Easy and fast. Chain 3, rose puff into, skip these 3 chains here, rose puff into that double crochet, Since this is my last puff of this row, I'll just mention a few polishing tweaks for pretty puffs. So when I pull up my loop to the height of a double crochet, you know, I'm estimating that, I'm eyeballing that, and after a while it just becomes a natural sense of what's a good height. So when I have that sense of how high I want it, I pinch here and I tug here. I also tug here. That way if I'm tugging, you know, the pinching keeps it from changing the loop height. Then when I yarn over again, I hold that with my thumb. It gives me more control while I find the stitch. Pinch and tug. I may not always pinch and tug after every half double, but at the end, before I complete the puff, I do that. I do a final tug. It makes these loops line up so nicely. Chain 3, double crochet in that chain 4 space, chain 1, and then double crochet into the starting chain 4. Now for the pattern, you just keep repeating row 2. So I would chain 4 and turn. And then I would skip the first double in the first chain. I would do a Rosepuff in this double, chain 3, double crochet in this chain 4 space, chain 3, Rosepuff, chain 3, double, chain 1, and double in that space. And if you're interested in learning how to do this stitch pattern starting in one corner, such as this blue one here, start here and then increase at the edge of every row, then get a hold of the Rosepuff Shawlette pattern, which will have a link to a separate video just for that. Happy crocheting!